This video was commissioned by my Asbantium level patron, FaolanCortez. You can commission your very own review right now by going over to my Patreon page. Here we go again. A few months ago I was commissioned to review the latest edition of the My Little Pony franchise, A New Generation. It was definitely unlike anything I've ever done before, and I even got ponified by my Discord server. But my review was so good I was commissioned again for the follow-up special, Make Your Mark. This sequel picks up a little while after the ending of that introductory movie, where the three kingdoms of Equestria have reconciled and are learning to coexist once more with the return of magic. Make Your Mark started off in a tricky place from the beginning, having a lower budget than its predecessor and therefore changing some core features of its presentation. So, is it a worthy successor to A New Generation? Does it continue that movie's interesting themes and commentary? Well, like the world's most pointless private investigator, that's what I've been hired to find out. Also, to once again clarify, I am not a My Little Pony fan. Not that there's anything wrong with being a fan, I'm just clarifying in case I get anything wrong. Although my girlfriend is basically my continuity advisor for these things because she's a massive fan. So with that out of the way, let's get on with the review.
I don't know if you noticed, but I consider myself a bit of an artist.
At the end of A New Generation, the protagonist used the power of friendship to repair the magical crystal controlling all the magic in the world. And since Sunny was the one responsible for that and became an alicorn, which are the ultimate combination of all three races, she's kind of a big deal now. I'd probably say she's one of the most important people on the entire planet. But this episode doesn't really make that a thing. She's still treated fairly normally, which is fine, albeit a little bit inconsequential. However, she does give public addresses on social media, reminding everyone that Big Pony is watching, always, so behave. This whole Maritime Bay Day advert is very cringy and clearly tailored towards the ADHD riddled brains of TikTok kids, since it's a complete overload of unnecessary in-your-face editing and sound effects. It feels so forced and painful to experience, but luckily for all us people who want to stay sane, one of Hitch's little owl critters steals the phone like a fox at Save a Fox Rescue. Thanks little guy, you saved a lot of headaches. This leads to a blink and you'll miss it chase sequence, which is nothing special and it's over before it even really started. If only they could have funneled some of that energy from that TikTok scene into this one. It's then that we're introduced to Posy, an earth pony who lives on the outskirts of town and hates the return of magic because she feels left out. She does actually have a decent point, because it would feel unfair that the earth ponies draw the short straw and have to be the only race out of the three who are essentially useless. While she's forced to sit there literally grounded in reality, the ponies around her are yucking it up, flying around or making objects move with magic. So obviously she'd feel left out and less special. But it goes deeper than that. She's projecting her own insecurities and loneliness onto these completely unrelated people and blaming them for things outside of everyone's control. It's almost sympathetic in a way. She's not a cackling evil villain, she's just someone who feels disadvantaged and is taking her frustrations out on others. It makes her an interesting antagonist, especially compared to the more outright evil Sprout in the previous story, who became an authoritarian extremist trying to genocide the other races. Instead of something so dialed up like that, Posy is just a regular member of society who has been overwhelmed by all these changes and her entire way of life being completely turned inside out so suddenly. Yes, in my review of A New Generation, I criticised how quickly all the ponies were suddenly getting along and coexisting after centuries of animosity and deep-rooted racism. I mean, there were even movies based around unicorns and Pegasi being villains, so the entire Earth Pony movie industry would have taken a big hit, along with Cantalogic essentially completely tanking since it was basically built upon the fear and paranoia of the other races. So to have everyone suddenly so happy and willing to put the past aside felt cheap and unsatisfying. However, thankfully, Make Your Mark establishes that it isn't as quick of a process as it had seemed at first. Sprout and Phyllis had radicalised the people of Maritime Bay so easily that it's safe to say a lot of the population were already prepared to go to war with the other races. There was so much hatred and xenophobia ingrained within society that there was no way everything could just change back overnight. Characters like Posy represent that. What starts as simple jealousy begins to slowly morph into outright persecution and segregation, with Posy essentially calling magic dangerous and wanting the unicorns and Pegasi to do their magic elsewhere. She and her new breakaway followers want an outright ban on magic and a no-fly zone, which is very reminiscent of people from other religions or cultures being banned from practicing their religion due to the conservative views of the majority. There are also parallels to racial purity and immigration, since the Earth Ponies refuse to allow a Pegasus to change the Maritime Bay Day song or even let any non-Earth ponies sing the original version. So there are good glimmers of the same socio-political themes and realistic storytelling of a new generation. I just wish it was a bit more prominent and focused on. However, the majority of the population are happy to coexist with their new friends, as represented by the rebuilding of Sunny's lighthouse, which was destroyed by Sprout and is now a big magical beacon tower thing. It's a strong symbol of unity, an iconic landmark of the past, destroyed by the harmful racist society of the present, and now rebuilt by this new unified and accepting society of the future. Rather than holding on to the past, these ponies are instead using it as the foundation to build the future, which is a really strong message showing the importance of cooperation and moving on together, so it works really well in this regard. What doesn't work well is the new cast. It turns out that the entire main cast was actually recast for this, since the movie was too ambitious with its big name actors and celebrities like Sonic Man, High School Musical Girl, and YouTuber. Since they couldn't get these actors back going forward, they're instead replaced by a bunch of randos with a lot less charisma, and it's very noticeable.
Well, thank goodness for magic.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. Faux show.
They feel so isolated and awkward throughout this episode, and it's only really Izzy and Hitch that feel accurate to their movie counterparts, with Izzy very authentic, probably because she's voiced by the most experienced and credited member of the cast. And then you also have Hitch, who is the other best sounding character, despite the voice actor's only other main credit being the animated adventures of Bible Man. Well, you know what they say, we've all got to start somewhere. Hitch gets a decent role within the episode, finding a dragon egg on a beach and raising it as his own, becoming Sheriff Hitch of House Trailblazer, Father of Dragons. So it's kind of important he gets good voice acting. Really, the main character of Make Your Mark is Zip, who is a bit underdeveloped in a new generation. Right from the get-go, she's a focus, with her new flying powers and saving the lives of some random Pegasi who still can't fly properly. You know, that just makes me wonder how many of these ponies have got themselves killed since they gained all these new magical abilities. There's a cheery thought for you. But Zip really is the main core of the episode, because it deals a lot of her responsibility and place in the world. Her mum expects her to move back home to learn the ways of the monarchy, since she is the heir to the throne. But the crucial detail is that Zip never asked to be a princess. It's not what she wanted, and it's just what she was born into. The idea of this kind of legacy and pre-planned life as a monarch is one of the oldest stories out there, but it's still worth exploring. We saw in the movie that she's a bit of a rebel, wanting to do her own thing and live life as a normal person. Something further backed up at the beginning of this episode, where she sneaks into her own house for the thrill of it and to avoid all the pomp and circumstances of being recognised as the princess. But instead of her just being able to take things at her own pace and choose her own path in life, she has it all decided for her. She's expected to carry all these responsibilities and become someone she doesn't want to be. But no matter how hard she fights it, it's inevitable.
I'm going to have to do it someday.
It's a lifestyle she's not prepared for and doesn't want. She doesn't feel like she fits in anywhere, and that's understandably relatable for most people, even if they aren't heir to a royal family. That's what the title means, Make Your Mark. It's about Zip finding her place in the world and what kind of person she is, which is a good theme for the episode, her just kind of stamping her authority and working out who she is. Understandably, Zip is very sullen and moody for the majority of this special, ignoring the others during their planning of the annual Maritime Bay Day Festival, which is a celebration of the town and its history. The reason Zip is so distracted is because she's been noticing magical weirdness, with unicorns and Pegasi experiencing glitches leading to mishaps and dangerous situations. Even Sunny can't maintain her alicorn form or summon it when she wants, it instead just happens randomly. From what I've been told about previous generations, alicorns usually stay in the form permanently, unless the story goes out of its way to strip them of their powers. So rather than having Sunny remain an alicorn like her predecessor, there's an actual build to it which creates an interesting narrative. It shows how magic isn't like an on switch. advantage. There's not just having magic and not having magic, sometimes it can go wrong or stutter like this. Obviously I don't know all the mechanics and deep lore regarding magic in this universe, but having it as this force that can be somewhat corrupted is quite clever, and lays the groundwork for some storytelling about the very nature of the magic that serves as the fundamental core for the series and its universe. But of course, in a tire cliche, nobody pays attention to Zip's concerns or warnings, and to make it even worse, there's a musical interlude. Which is amazing, considering how much I love musicals.
We can't just sing a song and ignore everything!
It turns out that the crystals are powered by friendship, which seems like a weird reveal because it was already established in a new generation. The climax of that story was all about how the crystals needed friendship to activate, so why would they be surprised to find out the crystals need friendship to stay activated? The story treats it all like some massive revelation when it's more like, yeah, I know. It is a nice idea to make magic fragile and important, susceptible to these glitches if the structure isn't upheld and maintained, but it's also quite dystopian in a way. It's like the Doctor Who episode Smile, where a colony of humans are wiped out by robots because they stopped smiling, and the robots misunderstood it and turned evil, killing them as a result. Just think about it. If you argue with that guy who cut you off when you were driving, you might accidentally destroy the magical crystal keeping society functioning and send the world back into the Dark Ages. It would make all of society feel so fake and forced, everyone pretending to love each other out of fear of breaking this crystal and destroying magic all over again. It would be so dark and terrifying, not being allowed to disagree with anyone because the fun police would come and barge down your door to try and tickle you into laughing. Smile, friend, smile, or the storm will come and smite us all. The protagonists then decide to band together to try and unite the peoples of Maritime Bay and get them all on the same page again, just like they did before. And there are only like 8 other ponies here anyway, so it can't be too hard, right? But it doesn't work because the casual acts of xenophobia start to mount up and start the storm. I do find it funny that a big clashing point is the sandcastle competition, since Earth ponies claim the Pegasi have an unfair advantage due to flying. Like, just get a ladder, idiot. All these flashpoints culminate in an extreme storm which unleashes a literal cosmic horror void probably containing Leviathans and Abeloth. And where did the racist ponies go?
And in the hole.
But predictably, the cooperation of the magic races helping the Earth ponies starts to turn the tide. Although Sunny still has to plunge herself into the dark nightmare void. She suddenly becomes an alicorn again for reasons, and this restores everything already? That was really sudden. The whole episode was building up to losing magic. Then it happens, and about 5 minutes later everything is fine again and the Earth ponies get magic too. It all feels so rushed and uneventful. The big climax just kind of happens. There's no real tension there or a satisfying feeling of completion. It's just a big letdown. And then everyone forgives each other, with Posey forgiven and being invited to sing the big new Maritime Bay song, of which we're thankfully spared. I don't know, it largely feels like nothing important happens in this episode. Outside of the dragon being born and the Earth ponies getting magic too, it's all pretty much what we already saw in a new generation, so the whole thing feels unnecessary and repetitive. But hey, at least there's a hint towards an overall villain, since some evil looking dark Queen Alicorn has been watching it all on her holo TV and pledges to take over the world. From what I've seen through basic research and what I've been told, there's never really been one overall main villain. So it would be interesting if that's what this is setting up, especially if it's anything to do with that existential horror void we saw. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see when I undoubtedly get commissioned to review the rest. To avoid beating around the bush, Make Your Mark is a big step down from a new generation. Without the bigger movie budget, this special lacks the charismatic and spirited main cast, along with less inventive visuals, so it feels a lot less special. That being said, I do like the focus on Zip and the continuation of all the themes from the movie, exploring the aftermath of the social upheaval and all the implications of such a dramatic shift in the world. However, I can't help but feel like it accepts its place in the shadow of that movie. It doesn't really push any boundaries or provide new narratives. It plays things a bit too safe, which squanders the momentum of a new generation. There isn't much to the narrative, so the ending comes around very quick and feels rushed, which makes it ultimately feel a bit disappointing and more like a mid-series filler episode. It's not terrible or offensively bad, it's just kind of bland. but that's not really the impression you would want a special to leave. It does a good job at laying the foundations for the future, but in doing so it struggles to carve an identity of its own. In my New Generation review, I recommended the movie, since you can easily just watch it as a regular animated family film, but Make Your Mark doesn't have that same kind of appeal or style, so it only really seems worth watching if you're already a fan of the franchise, or you know, if you're getting paid to watch it. Speaking of, yes, there's even more to come, so brace yourselves. And I'd like to give an extra special thank you to my Asbantium level patron FaolanCortez, my Diamond level patron Daniel Shillito, my Platinum level patron Keelan Gillespie, and all my Gold patrons Calvin, Franzhorn aka Line Vortex, George, Herna Verzog, and Luke_SY. Thank you so much for your support.